Mr. Dan Thompson was born in 1956. Dan's late father, Russ Thompson, a radio broadcaster, and his mother, the athlete of the family, inspired him to search for something that he was passionate about. He stumbled onto it by accident while coming off the golf course at the Donalda Golf and Country Club. The club's lifeguard, Olympian Jim Shaw, uttered these words: "We need some help swimming against Bayview. Can you swim a few races?" This chance conversation changed the course of Dan's life. He participated in his first swim meet and was invited to join the Swim Tech Swim Club. Dan trained under Jim Shaw, Nick Thierry, and one of the great Canadian technical coaches, Howard Furby, and together they helped Dan develop his impeccable butterfly technique. At 16, Dan was older than most novice competitors, so he needed to master the strokes, gain endurance, and develop a sense for the water. Another key factor to Dan's success was his fitness club instructor, Czechoslovakian team weightlifter Vlad Chirpa, who transformed Dan's physical strength, giving him a tremendous amount of power in the water. In the late 70s and early 80s, Dan held the Canadian record in the 100-meter butterfly. Placing 6th in the 1976 Olympic swimming trials gave him the determination to train harder. He broke onto the scene in 1977 as a butterfly specialist, winning 2 silver medals at the World Student Games in Bulgaria. Dan went on to win 2 gold medals in the 1978 Commonwealth Games in Edmonton and 2 silver medals in the 1979 Pan Am Games in San Juan. Thompson was Canada's national swim team captain from 1978 to 1981 and captain of the entire 1980 Canadian Olympic team. Unfortunately, the international boycott of the Moscow Games prevented his participation. Dan won a gold medal at the 82 Commonwealth Games in Australia.
Thompson's gold medal winning time was 54.71 seconds, a new Commonwealth record.
In 1983, he tied the FINA World Short Course mark in the 100-meter butterfly. This made him tied for world's best. From 1979 through 1983, Dan achieved 9 Canadian records. He was sidelined from the 84 Olympic team due to a shoulder injury.
He swam a time in the 100-meter butterfly back in the 80s that was the fastest time ever done in the history of the world. He went on to win gold medals at the Commonwealth Games. 4 years later, defended that gold medal, won a litany of medals all over the world, internationally and nationally, never lost a race while he was at the University of Toronto his entire 5-year career. Dan Thompson's truly one of the greatest swimmers that Canada has ever produced.
Dan was the first recipient of the T. Holders Award for the University of Toronto's 1980 Male Athlete of the Year, as well as the Canadian Inter-University Athletic Union's Swimmer of the Year, winning gold medals in each of his 5 races. In fact, Dan was undefeated in his 100-meter butterfly event in his 5 years of OUAA and CIAU competition. Dan was inducted into the University of Toronto Hall of Fame in 1991 and into the Ontario Aquatic Hall of Fame in 1993. A Masters swimmer since 1999, Dan joined the Aurora Master Ducks Swim Club in 2007 and holds 5 world records for the 50 and 100-meter butterfly in the 50 to 54, 55 to 59, and 60 to 64 age groups.
The way I'd characterize Dan is he's soft-spoken. He doesn't brag. He doesn't have a big ego. He inspires swimmers around him not only by his performance in the pool, both in practice and competition. He leads by example. And he leads by encouragement, and therefore he's very well respected.
Dan's long history of athletic service includes co-founding Athletes Can, serving as the athletes' representative on the board of Swimming Canada, and also serving as the volunteer president of Swimming Canada from 2005 to 2009. In Dan's professional career, he has devoted over 35 years to marketing, sponsorship, sports management, and not-for-profit leadership. Dan is currently a management consultant specializing in sport and strategic philanthropy, and has recently accepted the volunteer position of President of Swim Ontario. Dan still competes in Masters swim meets while representing Aurora.
He was a very quiet, mild-mannered young man. But when Dan spoke, his teammates listened. He was highly respected by his competitors. Dan, these accolades are well-deserved. Enjoy.
Sincere congratulations on being inducted into the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame.
And now, we are proud to welcome athlete Mr. Dan Thompson into the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame.
We'd like to invite presenting sponsor Adam Porteous from Aurora Masters Duck Swim Club to the stage, and your inductee, Dan Thompson.
Well, it's a great honor to live in Aurora, and I thank the Hall of Fame for recognizing my swimming journey. I'd also like to thank all the volunteers that helped here tonight, and I know this is a huge undertaking, and I know it's an honor for the town to have something like this. I'd like to also recognize Mike, Bob, and Mr. Fleury for their great accomplishments, and it's an honor to be inducted with them. Oh, we got it. I'm going to hold on to the mic. How's that? Good. Okay, now we're good. So I'd like to thank several people, and first to my sponsor, the Master Swimming Ducks, and Adam Porteous especially. I know we have a gaggle of ducks in the back, so thank you. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say that if you want to learn how to swim in the town of Aurora, and you want to be involved in a fun and fitness environment, the Ducks are the place to be. So we're open for membership, and come join us. Thank you. I'd also like to thank my nominee, Doreen Greason, and funny story, but back in the day, we were billeted in people's homes all over the country, and it was a great honor to be billeted almost 40 years ago now in Gary and Doreen's house. And I hope I cleared the dishes. I think I did. But Doreen and Gary moved to Aurora in 1989, and I did lose touch. But thankfully, last week we actually had a coffee at the Second Cup on Bayview, and we had a great chat. It was great to get caught up with them. So thank you for nominating me, Doreen. As the video stated, I came off a golf course at 16 and was recruited to a country club swim team, and that's how the journey began. My late dad was just so supportive and simply said, "Son, make sure you follow your passion." And it was good advice. It just took a long time for me to figure out what my passion was. My mom was the taskmaster, and she's here tonight. She pushed me when I needed pushing. She never let me get down, and always was there for me. And so thank you, Mom. You're the best. Mom's in the back. My mom is actually the athlete of the family, and so I think I get some of those dedication traits from her. You know, I feel so blessed to have met so many great people who've helped me in my career. And what I'd like to do tonight is just talk a little bit about those people. Because like many of you, my success as an athlete, a husband, a dad, is related to some great people who help shape who I am and how I think. And you know, swimming attracts great people. I mean, sport attracts great people, but I think it's staring at that black line that has something to do with it. But we're a very focused group. And I was just so fortunate to meet Jim Shaw, and you saw his picture up there. Jim was a really important mentor for me, and he inspired me to have a passion in this sport. And so, you know, I went off as a scrawny 16-year-old to the Leaside Aquatic Club. I drove my mother's 1966 Corvair with a 100-pound block in the front. That's the car that used to lift up, as you remember. But the good news was my parents didn't have to drive me because I was 16. So she didn't have to go, my mom and dad didn't have to go that requirement to get up at 5 in the morning to go to the pool. So I think that was good news. But Jim was so patient, and literally that first year he taught me how to swim, and he helped me with my endurance, because after all I was a golfer, so I didn't have a lot of endurance at that point. And I really wanted Jim to come tonight. He actually lives in King Township here, but he's playing golf in Arizona, so that to me is totally appropriate. So in that first year we merged with a club, and it was called SwimTech. And I met Nick Theory, and Nick happened to be Jim Shaw's coach, and he coached him in the 1968 Olympics. And Nick would agree that he probably wasn't the world's greatest coach, but he was a leading swimming statistician, and he was the editor of something called Swim Magazine. And he knew who was doing what all over the world. He did the FINA World Rankings. He knew what athletes were doing in workouts and repeats. So he couldn't get anything past Nick. And Nick taught me a new term, and the term was turd. And I was a turd for a long time, very affectionate definition, but you had to know him. He was a sort of very eccentric Hungarian. But the first season I finished, that season I went to a meet in Sudbury, and I went 113 for 100 fly, and that was solidly in turd territory, as I would say. The video talks about my strength coach, which is this gentleman, Vlad, who was a 5'0" Bulgarian Olympic weightlifter, and I was so lucky to meet him. And you know, he, at the prodding of my mom to get involved, I spent a summer with him, and I was 100% focused on getting strong. And he helped set up programs for me, and really helped me a lot. So I went back to the second year to this club, SwimTech, and people didn't recognize me. I had probably gained about 20 pounds in muscle, and I was strong and flexible, and so I was lucky to meet Vlad, I'll tell you. And the next stroke of luck was meeting Howard Furby, and he was Elaine Tanner's coach. Remember Mighty Mouse, the famous Canadian swimmer? He was a little past his prime, but he got a Carly O'Keefe coaching grant, and he was our technical stroke expert. So he spent time with athletes working on their strokes. Today you'd call it a biomechanist, and that's a fancy name for kind of what he did. But back then, he was very skilled at helping people with technique. So when I'd get tired, because I was a bit of a drop-dead sprinter, Jim would send me over to work with Howard. And Howard had these really cool human plasticine models, and he was an architect, so he had great drawings. And he would spend hours helping me with my technique and understanding stroke mechanics. And thanks to Howard, I developed a really good technique that's really, I think it helps me even today as I age gracefully, hopefully. So that second year ended, back to Sudbury, and I swam 100-meter butterfly, and I took 13 seconds off my best time, and I beat the Ontario champion. And I was on my way, but in Nick's mind, I was still a bit of a turd, but I was working on it. And then more training with Jim, Nick, and Howard. And they had kind of gotten me as far as I could. I think I was 6th at the Olympic trials in 1976, but I didn't expect to make the team. And my real breakthrough came when I met Derek Snelling, who was the head coach of the Etobicoke Swim Club and was, you know, Canada's preeminent Olympic coach. And Derek taught me really how to think like a champion. He was always focused on what I could do and not what I couldn't do. And what I couldn't do was a 200-meter butterfly because I was a drop dead sprinter, but I was really good at 80 meters. Now the race was 100. That was a bit of a challenge, but I made do. And so I had my greatest success with Derek, and you saw the video with the 77 World Student Games and Commonwealth Games and Pan Am Games and the Olympic team in 1980. I made the team, which was I'm so glad I did. Now it was a bit of a bummer not going to Moscow, but you know, when I look back at all the things that sport has given me and swimming has given me, you know, I'm a pretty lucky man. And oh yeah, so back after winning the 1978 Commonwealth Games, Nick Theory proclaimed I was no longer a turd, and he hung a huge 2x3 foot picture of me in his office, which was a great honor for me, and I still have that somewhere in, I think it's my mom's basement somewhere, and that was a really nice moment. I also had some really great coaches in university. The first coach I had was Robin Campbell, who was the head coach in 1977 and 1978 when I joined, and he was with two things. He was he was basically an architect of swimming at U of T, and he was the driver behind the Stevens Complex, which was one of the first 50-meter pools in Toronto. And what the architect said to him is, Robin, we got two things. You can, if you want a 10-meter tower, we can have a 25-meter pool and we'll cut it this way. If you want a 50-meter pool, we've got to cut it like this way. So we went 50-meter pool and 8 lanes, and I got to train for 4 years in a world-class 50-meter pool, which was very helpful for my career. Robin was also very helpful because he got me in school, and took him a while, but I'm so honored to be a graduate of the University of Toronto Department of Physical Education. Robin's still there. He's the head of advancement, actually, and one of his great joys, I think, was to hire Byron McDonald, who you saw in the video, and he was my coach at the University of Toronto for 5 years, and yes, I was undefeated in those 5 years, and I'm quite proud of that. But what I'm most proud of is that I stayed in Canada, and I was one of the first national team swimmers that stayed. Most went to the U.S. on scholarship, and I was honored to swim in the CIS system, which is now U Sports. And Graham Brown is here, who's the CEO, who lives in this community. He's the CEO of U Sports, and Graham, make sure we keep more Canadian athletes in Canada. Byron just, and you probably followed him and his commentating over the number of years, but to me he was sort of the master of what I call mind, body, and soul. He knew exactly what his athletes needed, and he was very good at reading athletes and really on the fly developing programs that worked for them. He's currently the coach of Kylie Massey, and of course she won the World Championships this year in Budapest and set a world record, so very honored to be associated with U of T and with him still. He actually mentored Linda Kiefer, who's probably one of the most, is the most celebrated female coach in the country right now, and probably around the world. So Byron has done some great things at U of T. And as the videos showed, I set a world mark in 1983, which I'm quite proud of. But in 82, at the Commonwealth Games, I probably overtrained, so I was basically on a taper for about 8 months, and Byron was able to harness that. And I've never come back so well in a race as I did in that race in 1983. And haven't since, but that's all okay. So I feel really fortunate to have met so many great coaches and so many great people in my career, and I really think they've helped shape who I am. My career ended in 1984 with a shoulder injury, but it was time to move on, and I had a great career. I met my lovely wife Julie, who's here, and we had 2 beautiful daughters, Caitlin and Megan, who are at Queen's. and of course numerous pets, including our current dogs Splash and Ripple, so it's kind of the aquatic theme. And as it said there, a lot of that footage was actually me swimming as a master swimmer. Fast forward to 2007, almost 23 years from my competitive career, I'm in Longos minding my own business, and Nancy Black corners me. And I don't know, many of you know Nancy, but it's really hard to say no to Nancy. And so I've been a master duck ever since, and proud of it. So to close, my family and I just love living in Aurora. It's a community that is so welcoming and encouraging to its citizens to be active. I hope you've all signed up for the pledge, the Active Aurora Pledge. And I'll just close. There's a great video, I think it's great. It's a social media video that Speedo put out, and it's this gentleman, Jorgen Schmidt. And he's 91 years old. He lives in California. He trains 5 to 7 days a week. He competes, swimming is his life. And I can only hope that when I'm 91, that I'm still swimming with many of you in a brand new world-class multi-sport complex with a beautiful 50-meter pool. And so, if you want to embrace the joy of swimming, and as we get older and we can't run and we can't do various things, swimming is just a great activity. You get fit, you feel great, it's wonderful. If you want to embrace the joy of swimming and get fit, join the Master Ducks. It's not too late. Thanks very much.
We officially present 2017 inductee Dan Thompson.